Erased Matriarchy. Unearthing the history of female power.
We tend to look at the history of kings and assume the crown passing from father to son was just gravity, a law of nature. We think that for thousands of years, nobody even considered that a woman could sit on the throne. But here on Erased Matriarchy, we know that is not true. In fact, keeping women out of power took a lot of paperwork.
Paperwork? I assumed it was just men with swords saying no.
Swords were involved, but the real weapon was a pen. Let's go back to Paris. The year is 1328. The air is cold, and the mood in the royal court is terrified. King Charles IV has just died. The Capetian dynasty, which had produced an unbroken line of sons for 300 years, has suddenly run dry.
So who gets the job?
Well, if you looked at the standard feudal laws of the time, the answer was obvious. The right to rule should have passed through the female line, specifically to the king's sister, Isabella of France.
Isabella. I've heard of her. The she-wolf?
That's the one. She was brilliant, ruthless, and already the Queen of England. Her son, Edward, was the closest male relative to the dead French king. By all rights, he should have united the crowns.
But the French guys probably didn't love the idea of an English king taking over Paris.
Exactly. It was a geopolitical nightmare. The French barons looked across the channel and panicked. They didn't care about gender theory. They cared about keeping the English out. But they had a problem. There was no law in France that explicitly said a woman couldn't transfer the right to rule. In fact, women in France inherited duchies and counties all the time.
So they were stuck.
They were desperate. They needed a precedent, something ancient and undeniable to block Isabella. So the lawyers went digging. They scoured the archives, blowing the dust off scrolls that hadn't been read in 500 years, and then they found it, the Lex Salica.
Sounds impressive. Was it a constitution?
Hardly. It was a penal code written for the Salian Franks around the year 500. It was a list of fines for crimes like stealing pigs, burning barns, or kidnapping servants.
Wait, they used a pig-stealing law to choose the King of France?
Just wait. Deep inside this code, Title 59, there was a section on dialotis. It was about private property, fences, and farmland. It said that for Salic land, inheritance couldn't pass to a woman. It had to go to the brothers.
Okay, but Salic land just means the family farm, right?
Precisely. It was a zoning law intended to keep family estates intact within a clan. It had absolutely nothing to do with sovereignty or crowns. But the French jurists in 1328 didn't care. They took this obscure private civil code and elevated it to a fundamental law of the universe. They argued that the Kingdom of France was Salic land.
That is such a reach. They literally just control-F'd for no women and copy-pasted it into the Constitution.
They did. They claimed this obscure rule proved that a woman could not hold the crown and, more importantly, could not pass it on to her son. They used it to strip Isabella of her birthright and install Philip VI instead.
And I guess that started a fight.
The 100 Years' War, to be exact. But the damage went deeper than the war. By weaponizing the Salic Law, they created a legal fiction that became reality. People forgot it was a trick. Over centuries, it just became tradition that women couldn't rule.
And we still feel that today. We think it's ancient wisdom, but it's really just a lawyer's loophole.
That is the erasure. They didn't just steal a crown. They rewrote history to make us believe female power was impossible, when really, it was just inconvenient for a few men in a room.
Ignite your muse with drops of inspiration. Search Musedrops.